Welcome to the Cerini Nonprofit Leadership Series, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are shaping the future of the nonprofit sector. I'm Ken Cerini, Managing Partner of Cerini Associates. Today's topic is one that resonates deeply across our sector: burnout, boundaries, and sustainability for nonprofit leadership. Nonprofit leadership is incredibly rewarding, but it also comes with constant demands, high expectations, and the pressure to always do more with less. That's why conversations like this one are so important, not just for organizational success, but for the well being of the people leading the mission. I'm thrilled to be joined by Tammy Severino, CEO of Girl Scouts of Suffolk County. Tammy leads an organization dedicated to building courage, confidence, and character in young people, while also navigating the very real challenges that nonprofit leaders face every day. Tammy, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
if I can kind of maybe jump in and ask a quick question. So, Girl Scouts is known for developing confidence, resilient young leaders. How has leading such a mission driven organization shaped your own views on resilience and avoiding burnout as a nonprofit executive?
It's a great question. With our girls, we have seen them grow into a time that is much more complex than when I was a Girl Scout. I don't know, I guess like you think of when you were a child as being a simpler time, and every generation thinks that the next one has it actually a little rougher. And so we try to balance what we're offering girls to give them lots of opportunities. We're giving them opportunities to learn about entrepreneurialism, about STEM programming, but also about life skills, which now has a tremendous component related to both physical and mental wellness. So we might have something that is based on boating down at our camp, but we also might have meditation and breath work and yoga done alongside the water so that they're finding ways to disconnect. We also, while they're at camp, have them disconnect. They don't go on their phones, and it allows for that one-to-one conversation. So we really try and help the girls to find the balance between being on all the time and being able to be in the moment. As a professional, I find I need to take lessons sometimes from the girls who are learning to do that. And it was important for me to find something that allowed me to step away from technology for myself. And so I started to practice yoga and to run to get away from what I was constantly in front of, which is a screen. Answering the phone, answering emails, messages, the number of ways people can access you now is tremendous. And that does have a tendency to keep your cortisol levels up. It keeps your brain constantly going. Having an ability to step away from it and be present in the moment, whether that's with family, with exercise, with reading a book, is really important. And I try to take a little bit of time for myself to do that now, because I think when I come back to the work part of it, which is just a short few minutes later, it allows me to be more present and focused and able to make better decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I find with people working remotely these days where, people aren't necessarily going into the office, they're working out of their homes, and a lot of times maybe they're working out of their bedroom or whatever it is. There seems to be somewhat more of a blurring of the lines in terms of, that work, what's home, what's whatever. So
Yes.
I find that people are kind of on more 24/7, and that kind of creates that stress because, as you said, we're more accessible than we ever were before, and we are making ourselves even more accessible. So I,
Agreed.
I agree with you that you need to have something that allows you to turn yourself off. How do you push that thought process down to your other leaders, the other leaders within your organization, and down to your staff?
I try very hard if I'm working on something not to send it. I leave it in draft mode until the next day, unless it's a critical issue that has to be addressed off after hours, a property issue or something like that. Um, if it's something that can wait until early morning, I'll send it early morning. Or I send it with a note saying, I needed to get this out of my brain and send it to you now because I'm working, but you're home with family. I do not want to see an answer before tomorrow morning. And I try to be very specific in that way because otherwise there is a full blurring of what is personal, what is professional. There's no separation, and if there is no separation, there will be burnout. It's going to happen. There's no ability to feed your own person, your family,
Mhm.
if you're involved in your local community. And I want to be respectful of that. So while, yes, there are conversations that happen off hours because Girl Scouts doesn't just happen between 9 and 5 on Monday to Friday. We are a 7 day a week operation. We are in the evenings and on the weekends for the girls to be involved. Um, but if it can wait, it should wait, just to ensure that you are being respectful of your team's personal time. And if I can do that with my leadership team, then they can forward, that can filter down to their individual departments. And hopefully then everyone is giving themselves that personal space that they need.
How do you ensure that people are, again, as we talked about, finding that balance? How do you ensure, like you said, you like to run, you like yoga, so you have your escape?
Mhm.
What do you do to ensure that everybody has that ability to get out of their head and to kind of find that little peace of mind in some sort of oasis?
When I talk to them one-on-one, I ask them what they do. And so we have another runner now on the team, and we have some who bake and some who spend time with their pets. I do that too because I have a small menagerie, um, who are currently being quiet, and I'm grateful. But whatever it is, different, some people want to binge a movie, a series or movies, whatever it is that gives you that moment to let your brain focus and let your brain decompress from the work focus. That's the important thing. It might just be conversation with a family or with a friend. So I'm not going to direct them in what to do, just try to ensure that they do.
And
I,
so,
I do that with my
how,
colleagues as well. I want to make sure that they are that they're taking care of themselves. So when we have those one-on-one conversations, we talk about that.
yeah, I was going to say, because I mean, obviously everybody needs to find their own passion. Not everybody's, I can't push my passion down on other people. But I guess the question is, how important is it for your staff to hear what your passion is so that they understand that it's okay for them to have their own passions too?
For our team, and for what they know, that I became a runner following an injury, and that I chose to do that, and I talk about it, and I talk about it freely with them, and they're very enthusiastic about it. So I appreciate that they are with me, and I want to be with whatever kind of makes their heart sing. So when I'm filtering around the building between meetings, I try and, see what people are up to, what they have coming up, what they're doing personally, as well as what's on the agenda with Girl Scouts. They're always going to tell me what's going on with Girl Scouting. I try to extract out of them what's going on more personally.
Yeah, I think anytime you can understand the people that work with you and take an interest in their lives, it brings down that stress level a whole lot. So let's turn back a little bit, I guess, to the Girl Scout model, which emphasizes like courage and character, right? So how do you bring those same values into the leadership approach when you're navigating the pressures and demands placed on you as a nonprofit leader?
Well, confidence, I think you have to know that if you've gotten there, you have to be confident in your ability to live the mission. So I think if you've chosen to sit in that seat, you believe in the mission that you're serving. I do believe very strongly in our mission, and I realized that when I said yes to the role, that I said it almost just automatically because it was such a natural thing for me. And when I looked backwards, I've been involved in Girl Scouting since I was 6. So having had it follow my whole life path,
Hmm.
it made sense that it should be in my career path. So I think if you embrace your mission, then being confident about being out there talking about the mission, being the chief ambassador, um, uh, giving your team the tools and the ability to do what they do so well comes easily. The courage piece of it is something that for me, I think if I have to think things through, but you cannot hesitate when you know you have a good decision that is made, whether it is hard or whether it's easy. You have to be able to pull the trigger on those decisions because for me, for example, I try to think of any engagement that I'm going to have, a meeting or an event that we're going to do is this good for the girls? And if I can answer yes, then having the courage to do whatever that decision is should come with the ease that it needs to. So I can feel very courageous about what I'm doing if I know what I'm doing is good for the girls, because if it's good for the girls, it's good for the mission.
Right. So kind of when you think about Girl Scouts or you think about, any good place to work, right? It's all based on like the culture, right? That's really the starting point of all of it. What's the culture of the organization? What's the organizational culture look like, feel like, everything else? Um, do you feel that the organizational culture comes from you? Do you think it comes from the board, or does it come from the leadership team? Where does that culture come from? And how has that culture helped to, create a good work environment overall? Help to
Uh,
lower that as you said before, the stress level, we'll say.
yeah. Well, I guess it has to come from all of those things. It has to start with me and with my board chair, and then filter down to the board, filter to our leadership team, and then to our full team, both our full timers and our seasonals, because we have our camp. And when we're in the middle of one of our product sales, whether that's cookies or our fall product, we have some seasonal folks who are with us who are amazing. And so it has to filter to everybody. And that's not one person's doing, that's a group effort. And that's having a team that believes in the mission, whether they are our volunteers, our board, or our paid staff. I look at, everybody is very busy. Nonprofits have more pressure on them to do more with less these days. And that can cause stress when there's so much to be done all the time. So I try to periodically pull the team together and sit down over breakfast, and have conversation. We did one where they were like, well, what's the agenda today? And I said, well, I want you to look to the right and to the left. Have you spoken to these two folks for the last 2 weeks? Yes? Okay, get up and go sit with someone you haven't spoken with. And that helps people to just get out of their everyday and make sure that we're operating as a full team, because you might forget that the next department is doing so much as well. And every department is working like crazy. So it's important to have those um, just easy conversations, because then you remember and you embrace and you come together, and the energy returns. And they also have the opportunity. We just had our annual meeting. We elected our slate for our board. We gave out awards to our volunteers. We had scholarships for five absolutely remarkable young women, and highlighted one young woman who a few months ago we gave the Medal of Honor, which is one of the highest courageous awards that a girl can earn, for actually saving her mom's life.
That's incredible.
And it was an incredible moment, and everyone in the room stood up, and there were 250 people in the room, and everybody stood up. And you realize that's why we're there, because we give the lift to that young woman, so that when her mom was having a crisis, she was able to do absolutely everything that she needed to ensure her family's safety and that her mom would be okay. And that's what it's about. And that moment, that event created an energy that every member of our team who was in the room took with them. And I said, keep those moments, lock them away, because you're going to have a bad day. And when you do, that's a moment to recall, because it will fill you when you feel empty. And I do that personally. And I think the majority, if not all of our team does that, and that's what gets you through a tough day, is to remember the day that was just exceptional. So I try to encourage that type of thing, and I think that speaks a little bit to our culture. Um, but we also have great relationships with colleagues in sister councils all across the country and at national. And so Girl Scouting truly lives both for the girls, the alums, the volunteers, and the team members all across the nation as a sisterhood. And that's part of the culture as well.
You touched on a whole bunch of different things. I can go in
Yeah.
many different directions with respect to my
So
next
pick one.
question, but I want to start with, I guess, with a comment. I mean, the whole aspect of, and I love the whole aspect of reinvigorating. When you have those positive moments, it's kind of holding on to those positive moments, remembering those positive moments, and using those as a way of, you're kind of reinforcing why you're there, because not every day is going to be a good day.
Nope.
For every uh, up day, there's a down day. So you want to make sure that, the staff can kind of hold on to something. So that's great. And, the more you can kind of push that's incredible. From a question perspective, one of the things that's super important, which you kind of talked about, is that whole aspect of organizational communication. Because if you've got, every relationship is based on communication in order to have a good, strong organization, one without a lot of the office politics and everything else, you really need to have that communication that's taking place. And when we talk about stress and we talk about well-being, some of those office politics can really drag that down pretty quickly. So again, I love the fact that you're sitting there and trying to stress organizational communication within the organization. You want to talk a little bit more about that before I get on to the next question?
Sure. I mean, communication is it's something that always has to be worked on because I think people have a tendency, we have a conversation about it, and then people are really good, and then they slide back because they get busy. But that's part of human nature to do that. So it becomes something where you have to just keep working at it. And like any good relationship, it does take a little bit of work. And I find that whenever we have some of the more heated moments in between staff members or any kind of, situation that arises, it's because communication slid, because people got busy, communication slid, and then feelings might get hurt. And then we talk it out, and it's the communication that then heals it again.
Right.
So I think being proactive with the communication is an important thing because that minimizes the heated moments, but human nature is human nature, and you're going to have heated moments. We don't all live in a window of bliss, though it would be a nice thing to strive toward. So when those moments do arise, it's communication again that will allow the temperature to come back down. And hopefully, on the other side of it, there's a better understanding, and now you can go forward more meaningfully. So, and that's part of also being resilient. And I was mentioning to you once before that I have a word for each year, and it does seem to fit where the times are. And we've had words like possibilities, and last year was boundless, and this year is resilience. And resilience is something that we're trying to impart to the girls and to the team and to our volunteers because everyone feels that they need a little of that right now. So for our girls, as they register, the patch that they earn will be about 2027, the 2026-2027 year being about resilience.
Awesome. You talked about culture, we've talked about your staff and stuff,
Mhm.
but Girl Scouts is also known for its very large volunteer base,
Oh,
right?
yes.
So how do you keep your volunteers energized? How do you keep your volunteers in a situation where you kind of prevent burnout at the volunteer level too? Because, you rely so heavily upon your volunteers and your leadership structure within the volunteers. So you have to almost take some of the same stuff you're doing from a staff perspective and kind of look at it from a volunteer perspective, but they're not getting paid. So how do you
Very
do
true.
that?
Well, they have such a meaningful role in Girl Scouting, whether they are volunteers serving on our board or on a committee or serving as troop leaders. they're giving a lot of their time and they're making an actual meaningful impact on the lives of a group of girls as they do it. You know, each set of troop leaders has anywhere from 4 to 15 or so girls, and they're helping to shape that next generation, and that is incredibly rewarding volunteerism, but it's also a lot of time and it's a lot of work. You know, if you think of your own household, most people have one, two, three children, 15 of them in your care at any given time. That's a lot of work, and I give them a lot of credit. And I've been there. I did that. I did that myself. And we try to be sure to say thank you often and meaningfully. We try to bring them together. We just had our awards presentation at the council level. Our different service units, which are broken up by school district, do a presentation of awards at the service unit level. And that's so important. They're recognizing troop leaders, they're recognizing cookie managers, they're recognizing treasurers and coordinators of camping and all the different things that our girls do. And they are truly lauded and applauded for that work. We try to make sure that at the end of April, when National Volunteer Appreciation Week rolls around, that we are saying thank you to them in some meaningful way. And we do a lot of trainings with them. And for new troop leaders, where it can be really overwhelming because the girls are very little, the troops tend to be at their largest size. We developed something based on something that Girl Scouts USA does when we have a whole bunch of new CEOs. They do a boot camp for us. We do a boot camp for our new troop leaders, and we'll put them into a cohort so that they not only have the volunteers in their service unit to rely on for information and questions that may arise, they have each other, and they will stay a cohort all through their Girl Scout experience. So it's something I know that the CEOs who I trained with, if I have a question, I reach out to them first, and they do the same. This group is trained by our manager of training, and she is fantastic. And she has developed cluster after cluster over the last few years since we implemented this. And we're finding a tremendous level of satisfaction. And they become the first troops to sign up for the following year because they're in a good headspace because they have the tools they need. And that's part of it, is making sure that any volunteer has the tools that she needs.
That's awesome. So switching gears a little bit, I mean, we talked about volunteerism. What about, fiscal, right? You think about fundraising, you think about bringing money into the organization, you think about rising costs. There's a whole lot of pressures that go on to a nonprofit leader from a financial sustainability perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you kind of deal with that with respect to, you have these pressures that you got to deal with. You've got, staff needs, staff want raises and all this other stuff. There's that whole kind of turmoil that comes about when there's not enough funds or you have to make hard decisions in terms of running the organization. How does that weigh on your well-being and the well-being of your staff?
It weighs heavily. It weighs very, very heavily. I like to be a person who can say yes a lot. And when things are tighter in the economic landscape, I can't say yes quite as readily as I might be able to. And that's hard on me personally. I know it's hard on our board and our leadership team. And of course, that spills down to our team. And so I try to find as many ways as possible to let them know how appreciated they are, because they truly are. And if the check can't be as big as I would like it to be because things are tighter during a difficult economic window, um, then I want to make sure they understand that that appreciation is still there. And we try to find as many ways as possible to look at the budget, every line of the budget, to ensure that we are making our smartest decisions so that we have as little impact as possible on our team and ultimately on our girls.
Yeah, which is the important piece of it.
Mm-hmm. So we're
Um,
looking at new fundraising efforts, trying to expand what we do, how we do it, make new friends in the community so that we have a wider base of support. Um, and we also try to let people know that it's not all about cookies, because there is for many a misconception that we don't need private fundraising dollars because we have cookies. But like any other product that you would buy in the store, you have to take out the cost to the baker and the delivery and the shipping and the rewards that the girls earn and the proceeds that go to the troops and the service units, so that it's not what we sell a box of cookies for that we get. It's just that smaller profit margin. So it is one of our revenue lines. It's not our only one.
I just want to stress the fact that I do use this to resolve stress issues.
Fantastic.
Keep a
So
box
thank you
on
for
my desk. It
supporting a
doesn't it
girl.
doesn't help it doesn't help the bottom line and the middle line, but it does release some stress.
There you go. Well, and it's important because the girls who are participating in
Mm.
our cookie program are learning 5 key entrepreneurial skills that down the road, if they choose to become one of the, I think it's, what is it, 55% of businesses are small businesses in the United
Mhm.
States. That number may actually be too low right now. I
Yeah,
think it's higher.
it's over 50. Yeah,
Okay,
it might even be
so
close to 60 at this point.
So for someone to open a business, they know the thing they know, but they need to know business skills to run their business, and that is what the girls are learning in Girl Scouts when they participate in our program. So if you see someone who is at a cookie booth selling, or if she comes with a parent in tow knocking at the door to offer you her cookies, know that although yes, you are going to get some tasty cookies, more importantly, you are supporting a future entrepreneur as she hones her skills. So that
That's
is our cookie
good,
program.
great way to look at things.
Yeah.
So, as a nonprofit leader, as a nonprofit CEO, often we find that CEOs feel isolated in their roles, right? I mean, if you any of your staff have questions, issues, things they need to discuss or go over, they can come up to you and have that conversation with you.
hmm
But where do you go? So, from that perspective, where do you go and how important is it for you to have a support system and what does that support system look like for you?
I think of myself as incredibly lucky. I have a really good support system. Girl Scouts is a little bit of a unicorn in that I have 110 sister CEOs, and I'm very close with some of them who I can reach out to if I have a question. And we have a chatter channel where we can put a question out to the whole group of, hey, I'm dealing with this in my council. Has anyone else dealt with this, and what have you done, and what kind of success have you had with it? So I have a space that I can go in that regard. I have a remarkable board chair, and I can go to her. And that is very helpful. My board generally is incredibly helpful if I have a question or need to run something by them for some thoughts. And I have colleagues in our Long Island marketplace who are running other nonprofits, who some of them are giants who I have grown up watching and learning from, and those who I, work alongside, and I know we can bounce ideas off of each other as well. And I happen to have, when he gets home from work later, I have my other half who is always a phenomenal sounding board for me. So I'm incredibly fortunate in that regard. I do know some folks feel very isolated in it, but I do have trusted folks that I can go to, and it matters.
We started off this conversation with the fact that you said that, every generation thinks that their generation was a little bit easier and that the next generation is maybe harder, different, whatever the
Mhm.
correct phraseology is. And as we look at the changing needs of youth and community expectations, and we go to, next generation, what innovations or organizational shifts are you exploring to ensure the long-term sustainability, both operationally and culturally, of Girl Scouts?
We are. We started a number of years back Girl Scouting in schools for girls who come from some of our most under-resourced communities, where there are an awful lot of parents who are just stretched so thin that the model of being a troop leader is just not permissible for them. So we bring Girl Scouting into those schools, and they are equal Girl Scouts to our girls in troops. But we also know we have a lot of families with two parents both working, and the bandwidth is just not there. But they do want their kids in lots of different programs. We see that by a number of different um, extracurriculars that kids are doing. That they're happy to have someone do it, but they just don't have the time to be that troop leader. So we've developed this year for the first time some pilot programming in certain school districts where we know that parents, they want their girl to be a Girl Scout, they just can't do it themselves. So we're bringing in our facilitators and providing in sessions that run for about a month and a half each for girls to be able to participate and learn all the good things that Girl Scouts do, have opportunities to participate in a lot of the activities in badge learning, badge work to learn the skills that earn them a
Mhm.
badge, to participate in the cookie program, and then also to get invitations to all of the council-wide things that we do at our camp and our other locations.
So we're basically out of time, but let me just throw out one last question to you. Just
Sure.
basically kind of looking ahead, what advice would you give um, to a nonprofit leader maybe who's struggling a little bit with burnout right now, or with trying to come up with that healthy balance that you seem to have kind of embraced?
I've embraced it this week, but to not so to not think anybody's perfect. Everybody is struggling at some point or another, and to know that I'm doing well with it this week. I will have a moment that is, like to my eyes and above, um, but it's then taking a step back. So you're doing important and meaningful work. And so when you do, you feel the weight of that because you know how many consumers are using, whether you're doing animal rescue or something related to an illness or human services. That's meaningful work, but you've got to give yourself a little bit of grace and step back and catch your breath and maybe take a moment that is for you, and then you can go back and be stronger for them. So I would just encourage them to find a thing because I felt like I had no balance at some point. Taking that time from, for you is not taking it from your organization. You're actually better for your organization when you do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. This was incredible. I want to thank you for your honest and insightful conversation. I think it's important to have these kind of open conversations about healthy leadership and burnout. And I think it's important for nonprofit leaders to kind of understand that, there are ways to kind of cope with this, and that they don't bear the weight of the world on their shoulders. I mean, obviously there's difficult decisions that have to be made and everything else, but you can still find that balance. So I think that's important. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Cerini Nonprofit Leader Series. These are the conversations that help us lead better, support our teams, and ultimately strengthen the communities we serve. If you found this discussion valuable, be sure to subscribe and share it with your network. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.